My name is Luke Wasem, and the title of my project is Applied Natural Climate Solutions, with a focus on finding post-wildfire reforestation opportunities in the Yampa Valley. So a little bit about myself. I am originally from North Dakota. I came to Steamboat Springs about 2 years ago to attend school at Colorado Mountain College, where I have obtained my associate's degree in outdoor education and am now pursuing my bachelor's in ecosystem science and stewardship. The first time I recognized the importance and urgency of sustainability was while working on an organic blueberry farm, in the bottom right here, where they were all self-sufficient there. I love the outdoors and I spend as much of my free time as I can hiking, climbing, camping, and skiing. My staff mentors for my internship were Tim Sullivan, who is the Natural Climate Solutions Director for the Yampa Valley Sustainability Council, and then also Ryan Messinger, who is the Yampa Valley Climate Crew and Volunteer Coordinator for YVSC. My project partners throughout this internship were the Yampa Valley Sustainability Council and also the U.S. Forest Service. So a little bit of background on my project. Wildfires have been increasing in frequency and intensity as global temperatures have been rising. The Yampa Valley has not been immune, and in Routt County in the last 33 years, there's been more than 130,000 acres of wildfire burn area. Among that, in the last 5 years, there's been over 58,000 acres, which is 44% of that total 33-year data set there. To show this, here's a graph of the number of recorded fires per year in Routt County among those 33 years, clearly continuing and showing this trend getting worse. So how does reforestation play a role into this, and why specifically focus on post-wildfire reforestation? Forests are not prepared for this type of fire regime that they are now experiencing now. They are more adapted to frequent low severity fires, and now they are experiencing more high severity fires, which eliminates their potential for regeneration by killing off all their seed source. Trees are super important to us and the environment. Some of the ecosystem services they provide are listed here, just to name a few. They help regulate the temperature of the air, soil, and water. They provide shade, so less water is evaporated and more stays in the ground and in our water sources. They help sequester carbon, which is a super important service right now. They help with positive air quality, and they also benefit positive water quality and quantity. The Yampa Valley is at the top of the watershed, so this is extremely important, not just for us who live here, but also for the 40 million people that this watershed eventually will contribute to. A few of the other benefits that trees provide us is their aesthetic value, their recreation opportunities, and then also they encourage stewardship. The objectives and goals of this project first were to research natural climate solutions for post-wildfire reforestation in a changing climate. I focused, second was to identify barriers to reforestation efforts in the Yampa Valley. To do this, I talked with local organizations like the Forest Service to figure out what they would need to increase their post-wildfire reforestation efforts. And finally, I made a goal to suggest next steps for YVSC for increasing post-wildfire reforestation efforts for them. So some of the key takeaways, first was identifying what the Forest Service is already doing in terms of post-wildfire reforestation. I focus on the Forest Service primarily because most of the lands in the Yampa Valley that are affected by the high severity burn areas are on federal lands that are run by the Forest Service. So they have a burned area emergency response program where they go to the sites of wildfires afterwards and see if immediate action needs to be done to support regeneration in those areas, such as planting grasses to eliminate as much potential of runoff and erosion as possible. They are also doing regeneration surveys where they take crews of volunteers and workers to document the amount of regeneration in these post-wildfire areas to see if they need to go in and do some tree plantings or seed spreading. So seed spreading and tree plantings are some of the Forest Service 2 primary actions that they are doing to promote regeneration of forests in recent high severity burn areas. So the pros of seed spreading are that it takes much less labor and time than tree plantings, and therefore it costs much less as well. Some of the cons of this is that the success rate is much lower than tree plantings. A lot of these seeds are food for the birds and critters of the forest as well, so a lot of them will get eaten up before they have the chance to develop into trees, and then also loss of seed from runoff. For tree plantings, some of the pros are that there is a much higher success rate. It is also beneficial to be more selective with your location to ensure a more typical forest structure for when they eventually grow into becoming a forest. Some of the cons of tree plantings is that it takes a lot more time, a lot more labor to do so. It is much more costly, and it takes a lot more care to promote the growth of these seedlings. Lastly, this process to get the seedlings planted relies on nurseries and the availability of these seedlings in these nurseries, which requires a lot more steps in the process as well. Some of the barriers to increasing post-wildfire reforestation in the Yampa Valley have been that there's not enough people to work to plant all these trees that are needed. Also, there is an uncertainty of successful plantings and seedings because of the less than ideal soil conditions that these high severity burns have been leaving these lands with. In the past, budget has been a limiting factor for organizations that support reforestation efforts in the Yampa Valley, but recently there was a new infrastructure bill that was passed in November that will contribute to many more trees being planted over the next decade here. And lastly, a lack of public advocacy in our community has been a limiting factor as well, as the community is generally less informed on this matter and does not put as much priority towards reforestation. So the severity of climate change impacts on our forests have led to question what forests should look like now because of the current conditions they are experiencing compared to what they have in the past. Many of the species of trees that are within our forests around here are not adapted to this climate. And so in a changing climate, there is possibility that a changing forest structure is in the midst as well. Adaptive silviculture is a practice that is fairly new and just beginning to be researched and experimented with. This is the planting of new genotypes of certain species of trees and also brand new species of trees to an area that are more adapted to the climate that we have and the fire regimes that are within our ecosystems. This chart here models this process that adaptive silviculture strives to accomplish, going from resisting climate change impacts towards promoting a more resilient landscape and eventually transitioning to a more stable climate in the future. Reforestation efforts nationally are going to be increased greatly from, like I said, the Infrastructure Act, which is the Infrastructure and Investment Act, and it encompasses the Replant Act, which is going to contribute to the planting of over 1.2 billion trees over the next decade nationally. So what are YVSC's roles in increasing post-wildfire reforestation in the Yampa Valley? YVSC can use their position in the communities to continue to provide workers and volunteers needed for these tree planting events. Also, YVSC can collaborate with other nonprofits and other businesses in the area to contribute to more volunteer numbers as well. And then lastly, they can also educate the community on the needs of post-wildfire reforestation, specifically here in the Yampa Valley. So the suggestions I'm leaving YVSC with from my internship is that they should continue community education to build awareness on the reforestation needs of the Yampa Valley, continue to research and experiment with adaptive silviculture. I also suggest increasing the number of tree planting events as the numbers of volunteers grows as well. Encouraging community members to speak up about wanting more post-wildfire reforestation to their local agencies that can support this. And then lastly, encourage community members to ask their state representatives and senators for increased reforestation efforts. Some of the other YVSC projects that I've been a part of, I helped with the annual Retree event that plants trees along the Yampa River. I helped set up with some of the setup of the new Yampa Valley Hard to Recycles facility. I also helped out with Thomas's Purple Mountain Film event. This past summer, I was a part of the Farmers Market Zero Waste Stations and helped out there. And then I also helped out with one of the regeneration surveys, like I mentioned before, which was up on rabbit ears at the Silver Creek burn scar from 2018. Some of my personal takeaways from this internship, this was my first taste of what research is really all about. So it was super valuable to learn this research process and how to do this effectively. And it was super dynamic, lots of ups and downs, dead ends, breakthroughs, and just figuring out how to deal with each part of this process was really important to me as I move forward in my career and in my education. Another personal takeaway from this internship was realizing how important an opportunity of an internship like this is. This provided connection for me to the community, and I am now able to say that I contributed to a healthier future of the Yampa Valley, and I got to do this while representing YVSC, which was amazing. I'd also like to say thank you to all of our guest speakers that took the time to talk with us interns throughout the term. A few of you are here today. These conversations were super valuable and for us rising leaders in sustainability to make connections with you all in the field and the community and just to learn from your wealth of knowledge. I would like to say thank you to Michelle Stewart, our Executive Director at YVSC. Thank you for your leadership and support throughout this internship. Tim Sullivan, my mentor through this internship. Thank you for your guidance and mentorship and introducing me to this important field and just giving me the tools to contribute here in the Yampa Valley. Ryan Messenger, my other mentor, thank you as well for your guidance and mentorship and sharing your experience with me in the field. Sam Hahn of the Forest Service, thank you for your interest in my project and collaborating with YVSC on this important work. And Nicole Pepper, our intern program manager. Thank you for making this internship possible and for all the hard work and dedication you put in for us interns just to have a successful opportunity like this and introducing us to the professional world of sustainability. Any questions?